The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone. We're glad you could join us. We're just going to give a few more minutes for any latecomers, and then we'll get started at 12 on the dot. So just hang in there with us. Hi everybody. So we're going to go ahead and get started. First, I want to make sure that everyone can hear us okay. Just to let everybody know, we're going to have you on mute through the duration of our presentation, and then we'll unmute and we'll save questions for the end. But for now, I want to make sure that everyone can hear us. So if you can just type yes under the questions pane so we know that you can hear us, that would be great. Okay. Okay, so it looks like most everybody can hear us, so great. Okay, so I guess we're ready to go ahead and get started then. So I'm Mandy.
And I'm Dana.
And we are both research assistants with Carson Research Consulting in Baltimore, Maryland. My work at Carson primarily focuses on positive youth development and school-based programs and involves research on early childhood development and education in support of evaluation reporting. What about you, Dana?
Well, my background is in quantitative and qualitative research, mostly focused on maternal and child health, teen pregnancy prevention, smoking cessation, and mental health. I also support other aspects of CRC's evaluation activities. And in my pastime, I also like to color code my workspace.
That pretty much sums it up. Both of us are actively involved in the evaluation community, nationally and locally. We both use Excel regularly in our everyday work and are well versed with the software's tools and capabilities.
Right, and we have both designed a number of charts that are highlighted in CRC's evaluation reports and presentations. And not only are the charts engaging and functional, but they also are easy to read.
And since we both have served a diverse set of clients, I would say we bring a unique perspective into the mindset of stakeholders spanning diverse fields. But I'm biased, I guess.
Biased, I agree that we do bring a unique perspective. So now let's get this show on the road. Today, during our webinar, we'll be going over basic data visualization design principles. We'll demonstrate how to build select charts in Excel 2013 and provide pointers on presenting your data. But before we get started with all that, we want to administer a quick poll to get some information on you. So we'll just go ahead and launch our poll. So tell us, what has your experience been like using Excel to create charts and data visualization? Has it been superb? You love creating charts and data viz in Excel? or fairly painless and easy, but you could use them pointers, or you use Excel but never to create charts or data viz, or lastly, you don't use Excel but you want to learn how to use it. So the poll's open. You can go ahead and select your option.
Looks like we've Okay, so it looks like for most of you, using Excel to create charts or data visualizations has been a fairly painless and easy process, but you could still use some pointers.
Well, that's interesting. Seems like a lot of viewers are kind of like our fake client, Joe, who had some trouble transforming his own data set into a presentable data story.
Oh yes, I definitely remember him. I think his story would actually be helpful today. Do you think we should tell it?
Sure. I guess we have some time for it. Do you want to get started?
No problem. So it all started with a fake client of ours named Joe. He was the lead of a very large study on social interaction, and one day he brought us an Excel file with raw data from his study. He had a funder meeting coming up, so he was quite worried about transforming his ugly data set into a presentable data story.
Yes, and he didn't even know where to get started. So we took the data set in and started analyzing it.
After analyzing the data, we found several different data stories Joe could potentially tell at his funder meeting. The first story was fairly simple and involved a basic bar chart. This chart was used to visualize program participants' most preferred method of contact by type of contact, be it snail mail, in-person, phone call, SMS text, email, or social media. So how do we go about creating this type of chart? So first, we're going to have our spreadsheet open here, and we are going to want to select our data and insert a simple bar chart. To do this, you can click on the Insert tab at the top of your spreadsheet, then click on the tiny arrow next to Charts, and under All Charts, the column, you're going to choose Clustered Column. Then next, once your chart has been inserted into your spreadsheet, you're going to adjust the gap width property of your bars. This will make the bars appear wider and closer together, and hence will make it easier for viewers to compare across categories. To adjust your bars gap width property, you're going to simply select the bars within your chart and double click. This will open the formatting pane on the right side of your screen. And then in the formatting pane under series options, you can adjust your chart's gap width property. So a gap width of 100% will mean that the gap will be 100% as wide as the bar. For this chart, I'm going to use a gap width property of 25%. Next, we're going to add our data labels. This will help the viewers quickly identify the value of each bar without having to run their eye to and from each bar to the axes to see where it lies. First, you're going to select your chart, then click on the plus sign that appears in the top right-hand corner. Then you're going to select the tiny arrow next to data labels. This will open up a pane that will give you different placement options. And then for this chart, we're going to choose inside end. Now that we've added the data labels, we need to get rid of all the clutter junking up our chart. So if an element doesn't contribute to the understanding of your chart, you just need to cut it. Since we've added data labels, there's really no use in keeping the grid lines our primary vertical axes. They only distract our viewers from the meat of our chart, which is the data. So to remove the grid lines, you can simply uncheck grid lines in the chart elements pane. To remove the primary vertical axes, you're going to click on the arrow next to axes and then uncheck primary vertical. If there are any other elements you want to remove from your chart, you can uncheck them in this pane. Otherwise, to close the chart elements pane, simply click on the plus sign again. So our chart is nearing finalization. Now it's time for the fun stuff, which is making it beautiful. So first, let's start with formatting the bars in our chart. To format them in another color, just double click on them. This will open our formatting pane. Then you're going to click on the paint bucket. you're going to make sure that fill section is expanded, and you're going to select solid fill. In the drop down next to color, you can choose the color that you want for your chart. For this chart, when you're choosing these colors, I have to tell you guys, you want to be mindful when selecting the color palette. You should stick with colors that are found in nature and reserve the use of bright, highly saturated colors for highlighting specific data points. So for this chart, I'm going to decide to format my bars in a light shade of blue. If I wanted to emphasize how the email bar is significantly higher than the others, I could format it in an even darker shade of blue. You can do this by clicking on it again, which will select the individual bar. And then under color, I'm going to choose navy. So notice how when we change the color of the bar that the pop-in color draws your eye to this category. The only problem is now that we have formatted our email bar in a darker shade of blue, our data labels become a little tricky to read. We can quickly fix this by formatting our data labels in white instead of black. To do this, you just select the data labels on your chart, and then on the Home tab, in the font section, you can change the font fill color, which I'm going to select white. For the data labels on this chart, I'm also going to increase the font size to make them a little easier to read and format them in bold. So now that we've chosen the color palette of our chart, we can add a descriptive title. This really attracts viewers and helps them more easily grasp the data story that you're trying to tell. So to change the title of your chart, you double click on the chart title, text box, and type your title. For this chart, I'm going to add a main title and a subtitle. So the main title will help give viewers an idea of the data being portrayed on the chart. Let's make this Participants' Most Preferred Method of Contact. We should format this in bold. In our case, it looks like it already is. Left align it. And select a font size of 14, which in our case, it looks like it already is at font size of 14. Now we're also going to add a subtitle to this chart. This is a little bit more descriptive and will help provide more context to the data story that we're trying to tell. So I'm going to make this Most People Prefer to be Contacted via Email. I'm going to add this below the font title. And let's make our chart a little bit. There we go. So we should format the subtitle in a smaller font size than the main title, and don't worry about making it bold. I'm also going to remove the italics. And then if we wanted to, we can highlight the word email in navy to match the data bar for that category. So you can do this by selecting the individual word within the title and by changing the font fill on the Home tab. Now that we've added a descriptive title to our chart, we just need to make sure that our font type, size, and style is appropriate. So you want to make sure that your main title is the largest font size, followed by your subtitle, then categories and data labels. So I think I'm going to increase the size of my categories down here. And I'm not sure if I'm in the X out of this. There we go. And I'll just do those at a size 10. So now that we can see that my main title is formatted in a font size of 14, the subtitle in a font size of 12, my data labels in a font size of 10, along with my categories. For emphasis, I only chose to make the main title and data labels in bold. And ta-da, your final chart should look something like this.
That was quite the transformation. You should also show our viewers how to create the overlapping floating bar chart.
So you mean that really cool chart that visualized participant ratings of contact methods by generation?
Yes, that is the chart I'm talking about.
Sure. So Joe's data also revealed another cool story to us, that participants' most preferred contact type varied depending on the year they were born. There was an inverse relationship between baby boomers and millennials' ratings of contact methods. We found a great way to visualize this data by using an overlapping floating bar chart. So to create this chart, first, you're going to select your data and you're going to insert a simple line chart. You can see that the default Excel chart plotted my baby boomers max ratings with a blue line and their minimum ratings with an orange line. You can also see why millennials max ratings are plotted with a gray line and their minimum ratings with a yellow one. So now that we've got these charted, we need to make sure that our data series are plotted on the appropriate axes. In order to get the bars to overlap in our chart, one of our data series needs to be plotted on the primary axis and the other on the secondary. So since your chart already automatically plots our data series on the primary axis, all you have to do is change the data series you wish to plot on the secondary axis. So to do this, first you're going to select which data series you want to plot on the secondary axes. So just remember, this data series is going to be the one that appears to lay on top of the other. In my case, I chose to plot millennials' maximum and minimum ratings on the secondary axes. There's no real rhyme or reason. I just figured they should be laid on top. So once you have this figured out, you're going to select the lines of the data series you want to plot on the secondary axes. So in my case, the millennials ratings. So I'm going to click on the gray line. Then you're going to right-click and select Format Data Series. In the formatting pane, you're going to select secondary axes. You're going to repeat this step for the yellow line in your chart. And then when you click on the other lines in your data series, you'll see that they're still plotted on the primary axes, which is what we want. So that's good. So now that you've added one of your data series to the secondary axes, you'll see another axis pop up on the right side of your chart. We need to make sure that this matches the range of our primary axes on the left side of our chart. So to do this, you double click on the axes. Then you're going to select axis options, and then make sure your minimum and maximum bounds and major and minor units match that of your primary axes, which in our case it looks like they do. So we can just go ahead and delete the secondary axes now, which we can easily do by just simply clicking on it and then selecting backspace or delete on your keyboard. So once we've deleted the secondary axes, now we're going to add high-low lines to our chart. These are going to connect the maximum and minimum values for each generation and eventually turn into our floating bars. So first, we're going to add high-low lines to our primary data series lines. So in my case, this would be either of my baby boomer lines in orange or blue. So I'm going to select one of those lines, and then under Add Chart Element, Lines, select High-Low Lines. I'm going to temporarily format these lines in blue so we can easily differentiate them from the next set of high-low lines we add to our chart. Doesn't matter what color, we're going to change it anyway. We just want to be able to tell the difference between the two for now. So now I'm going to add the high-low lines to my primary data series. Okay. So now that we've added these high-low lines to our chart, we can hide our data series lines. So you can do this by double-clicking on each of the lines in your series, which will open the pane, and then we're going to select No Line under the Line section. And we'll repeat this step for each of the lines in our data series. And now you can see that our chart is left with simply the high-low lines. So now we can format these high-low lines. First, we're going to adjust their width. You can do this by double-clicking on them, which will open your formatting pane. So for my high-low lines in blue, I'm going to do a width size of 35 points. And for my high-low lines in black, I'm going to do a width size of 25. So the variation in width size across the primary and secondary data series will help viewers more easily see each bar when they are overlapping each other. So since the primary data series will be plotted underneath the secondary data series, we want these lines to appear a little bit wider. So next we need to decide what color you want to format your high-low lines in. So the line for your primary data series should be plotted in a separate color from those of your secondary series. We can change the color of these bars just how we did with the basic bar chart. So you're going to simply select them, and then in the formatting pane, you can select the color. So for this chart, I chose to plot the high-low lines on the primary axis in a light shade of blue. And I'm going to choose to format the high-low lines for my secondary axis in a darker shade of blue. I'll just select that navy that we were using before. So after we finish formatting our high-low lines, you can start formatting your chart in general. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is subdue the grid lines on my chart. And you can do this by simply selecting on the plus sign, scrolling down to grid lines, selecting this little arrow, and then selecting more options. I'm going to choose a lighter shade of gray. This will make the grid lines less distracting to any viewers of your chart. So the next thing we're going to do is remove our legend. Since we removed the lines in each of our data series, this doesn't give us any useful information. We can format the title of the chart to help our viewers identify what our data chart is visualizing, but we'll worry about that in a minute. So to remove your legend, you're going to open the chart elements pane as we did before and select unchecked legend. So now we can go about adding a descriptive title. So to change the title of your chart, you click in this text box. For this chart, I'm going to make the main title Participants' Most Preferred Contact Type by Generation. I'm going to left align it. And I'm also going to make the chart a little bit bigger so it's easier for us to work with. And then I'm also going to add a subtitle for this chart. So this is going to be snail mail was rated the highest among baby boomers, while social media was rated highest among millennials. So copy that. I'm going to remove the italics. And so both our main title and subtitle should be left aligned. We should also format the subtitle in a smaller font size than the main title as we did before. And then I can highlight the words baby boomer and millennial in the same color as the corresponding bars on the chart. So this is going to help our viewers identify which bars are portraying baby boomer ratings and which bars are portraying millennial ratings. So in my case, baby boomer was highlighted in a light shade of blue. So I'll go ahead and highlight this word in a light shade of blue. While millennials were the navy bars, so I'll do that in a shade of navy. And once you've adjusted your formatting, you should get a final chart that looks something like this.
That was another awesome chart, Mandy.
Why, thank you. But you know, my favorite chart we made for Joe was the broken stacked bar chart. It was just so easy to comprehend and quite attractive. I think it might have been one of his favorites too.
It very well may have been. I can definitely go over that one. So Joe's dataset also showed us another interesting thing, that the most preferred type of contact participants reported making differed by the type of individual or group they were contacting. For instance, a majority of the participants reported contacting friends and acquaintances using social media or email. However, when it came time to contacting their spouses or significant other, they preferred making more in-person contact or phone calls. So we decided to display these findings in one single chart rather than creating multiple bar charts. This way, the interesting differences and comparisons could be easily visualized. So let's just go ahead and look at how to create a broken stacked bar chart. Our initial take was to first look at the data set, and we decided to create a horizontal stacked bar chart. You would do this by simply selecting the entire data set, and then you would just go to the Insert tab, and under the horizontal stacked bar chart icon, you would just click the drop-down menu, and you would click a horizontal stacked bar chart, like so. However, we quickly realized that although a stacked bar chart is useful in presenting multiple pieces of information simultaneously, it still makes interpretation of patterns present within a single group or across the different groups difficult for the reader to readily observe. For instance, a reader can easily interpret the values in the first set of stacks, but it becomes difficult to judge the exact widths of the subsequent stacks because each stack has a different starting point. Thus, the reader has to constantly account for this difference by mentally interpreting the variability between the multiple stacks and across the different bars. One way to eliminate this problem is to create a broken stacked bar chart, which involves essentially adding spaces between each of the stacks so that the bars appear to be left aligned. So let us walk through the steps for creating that chart. We'll just go ahead and get rid of this chart. In order to first create a horizontal stacked bar chart, we have to actually calculate the spacing gap between each pair of stacks. To do that, we first review our data set and we identify the largest value. Note that I've excluded the values in the last column since you don't need to calculate the spacing in front of that stack. That'll be done by default. So we look at all the values within this selected data columns and we identify the largest value. In this case, it's 50. And then we add 10 to it. This will give us a value of 60. We add 10 to essentially create a little additional buffer space between each of our stacks. And you will see how this works out once the chart is built. Then we go ahead and add additional columns between each of our stacks. So we'll go ahead and select each column like so. And you do that by simply selecting the column and then you'll just press down the control key and then you'll select the next column. Once you've selected each of your columns, you'll right click and you'll select the insert and then you will just shift the cells to the right like so. Now you see that you have additional columns created in between each of your data column. We'll go ahead and label these spaces, these additional columns spacing. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy paste that header into the additional columns, like so. And we'll just change the number so that we know what spacing we are working with. Next, we'll go ahead and calculate the spacing gap by subtracting each data value from the maximum value that we calculated, which is 60. So we'll do that we'll just click equal to, we'll type in 60, and you're going to subtract each data value, like so. And then we can just drag and drop this formula onto the other rows below, like so. So essentially to drag and drop, you just select the cell, and when you see that little cross icon, you just drag it and drop it. And then when you go to your other rows, you will see it's automatically it's copied the formula for the other rows. And then we'll just go ahead and copy these formulas into our additional spacing columns. it'll automatically readjust the cell it is referencing to the left. Once we have calculated the spacing gaps, we can go ahead and start building our chart. Again, we will just select our entire data set like so. We'll select the original data set as well as the additional spacing columns we created. And we'll go to the Insert tab. And again, we'll select the option for the horizontal stacked bar. Note that the initial chart that has been created by Excel by default has plotted the spacing as additional bars. So we actually want to reverse the orientation of this chart. We want the context to appear, the different contact methods to appear on the legend, and we want the different groups or individuals to appear on the axis. To do that, we simply select the chart, go into the Design tab, and select the option for Switch Row and Column. Once you have done this, you will note that now all our contacts, different groups of contact groups or individuals are listed on the axis, and then our methods of contact are listed as labels in the legend. And you will also note that the legend also shows the additional spacing that we added. Then it's just a matter of applying simple formatting changes. So we'll just go ahead and maximize this chart. I'm just going to scroll a little bit down so we can actually see what's happening. All right. So we'll go ahead and select each of our spacing stacks in between, and we'll just apply a no fill to it. This will essentially hide that spacing values, and it will make the other data value bars appear to be left aligned. So you'll go ahead and do that. So you just select your spacing stacks in between, you right click and apply a no fill to it. So we'll go ahead and repeat that process for all our additional spacings in between. If at any time you forget which of your colored bars are actually your spacing bars, you can simply look at the legend and use that as a reference guide. Again, we'll add a no fill to it. We have one last one. And you can see now you have all your original data bars appear to be left aligned. This makes comparisons easier to visualize. We'll go ahead and move our legend to the top of the chart. We can do that by right-clicking, and we'll click on Format Legend. And the formatting pane that opens to the right, we'll select Top for the legend position. This will move the legend to the top. Then we can go ahead and remove the additional spacing labels that are in our legend by just selecting each of those spacing labels and just hitting Delete or Backspace on your keyboard, like so. And you can disregard it, that formatting pane opens up. You just double click, and then when you see that little 4 dots appear, you can just delete. So you're almost getting there. We'll go ahead and just readjust the legend so that it kind of appears to be on top of the stacks. We'll go to the Home tab, and we'll increase the sizes of the legend so that it's a little more legible. So we'll just make this a 12. And then we can go ahead and remove any of the additional elements that we no longer need, like our grid lines. Next, we'll go ahead and add data labels to each of our stacks. You can do that by simply right-clicking each stack, and you'll select the option for Add Data Labels. So you'll continue doing that for each of your stack. You simply select the stack, right-click, and Add Data Labels. You have to do this individually for each of the stack. It won't automatically do it for all of the stacks. Again, you will simply select the stack, right-click, and select the option for Add Data Labels. Once you have done that, you can go ahead and also change the colors of the stack. In this case, we'll just make sure that any gray color is changed to a different shade of blue. So we'll just fill it in a different shade of blue. So that's too close to the original stack, so we'll just make that a little lighter. And you can pick any shade of blue. We're just gonna pick something that's easily visualized. And if you have a darker stack, you can either change the color so that the labels are visible, or you can even change the color of the labels to a different shade. In this case, we can apply a white so that the labels pop out. All right. Now that we have the data labels added, we no longer need the x-axis since it serves no purpose. So we can go ahead and select it and delete it. And we'll just scroll up to our table on top just to see how things are looking. Note that the orientation of your different groups and individuals that were contacted appear to be in reverse orientation to that appears on the table. We can simply make sure that they look the same by selecting the axis. You'll right-click and you'll go to the Format axis. In the formatting pane that opens up, you'll scroll down under Axis Options to where it says Axis Position, and you'll check the box for categories in reverse order. This will make sure that now your labels appear to be the same orientation as those in the table. Now it's just a matter of adding a descriptive title. So we'll go ahead and select our title, and then you will just click once on your chart title and just paste it. You can also go ahead and change the color to a black color so that it pops a little more. And there you have it, your broken stacked bar chart.
Even if that wasn't one of Joe's favorites, it certainly is one of mine.
I know, it's a really fantastic way to visualize this data set.
I would say. You should also show our viewers how we went about creating that awesome slope chart.
Do you mean that really cool chart that visualized trends in preferred contact method over 2 time points?
Yep, that's the chart I'm talking about.
Sure. Joe's dataset also reveals one final story to us, that participants' most preferred contact method has varied over time, specifically between 1980 and 2010, and we found a great way to visualize this data by using a slope chart. So let's just look at the dataset. Now you may ask, why not just create a line chart? So I'll show you. We will just go ahead and just create a line chart where you would just select your data set, go to the Insert tab, and you'll, under this little crosswise line column, you'll just select the drop down and select the option for line with markers. Now you'll notice that the default line chart created by Excel has a lot of elements that could easily distract a reader. Additionally, the reader has to constantly shift gaze between the two lines to determine the amount of change that has taken place with each contact method over the 2 time points. Last but not least, the different contact methods makes the whole chart a lot wider, and this could potentially complicate things if you had to embed this chart into a small space within a report. An easier solution would be to convert this line chart into a slope chart. Slope charts are useful in presenting change over time, and they also make unusual trends stand out quickly for the reader without making the chart overly cluttered. So let us walk through the steps for creating such a chart. Now that we have simply created this line chart, all you would have to do to create a slope chart is simply select the chart. You would go into the Design tab, and you'll select the option for switching row and column. This will essentially reverse the manner in which the data are plotted. So currently the data are plotted on the y-axis, will be plotted on the x-axis. So we'll go ahead and see how that transformation looks like. Notice now we have the makings of a slope chart. Then all we need to do is to add data labels. We'll select each line, and I'm just going to increase the size of this chart so that it's easier for you to see. So you would simply select each line, right-click, and add data label. So you'll go ahead and do that for each of the line. Again, you'll select each line, right-click, and select the option for Add Data Label. Looks like we got labels on almost all of them. So now that you have the data labels, you have to just make sure that the orientation of the labels are easier for the reader to visualize. You can notice that the labels on the left side of the chart appear to be on top of the line, and it makes it a little bit difficult for the reader to read what those values mean. So you can easily change the orientation and make these labels appear on the left side by simply double-clicking each of the labels so that only the labels on the left side of the chart are selected. And you'll right-click. You'll go to the Format Data Label option. This will open the Format Data Label pane on the right side of your screen. And you will just change the label position to appear on the left. At this time, you can also select the option to add a series name. This way, it denotes what that line is representing. In this case, this blue line represents in-person contacts. So we'll go ahead and make that adjustment to all the labels on the left. We'll simply select the label. You'll make sure they're on the left side and that the label contains the series name. Notice we didn't double click, so it actually added the series name on the right side. Now, if this happens, you can simply just select that right label again, and when you see the 6 dots come on the side, you can go to the formatting pane and just uncheck the label and make sure it appears on the right side. So again, you would just double click the labels on the left, and then just double click and then right click the Format Data Label option, and then you will select the option for series name so that the series name appears, and just make sure that the label position is on the left side. Now you can see that in this case, both the labels appear to be on top of each other. If this happens, you can simply select that label and just move it up, like so. You'll notice that now that we move the label up, you have this little line that has come here. These are known as leader lines. Excel does this by default so that it can help guide the reader to which label the line is reflecting. You can either opt to keep it or you can remove it. You can simply do that by right-clicking. You will go back to Format Leader Lines, and you will just select the option for No Line. And that'll just make the leader lines disappear. So we go ahead and just do the remaining of the labels. Again, double-click, make sure only the left side label is selected. And then you right-click for Format Data Label. Make sure the series name appears and make sure the label is positioned to the left. Again, double-click, right-click, and then Format Data Label. Make sure series name is selected and that the label is positioned to the left. Again, if it appears that the labels are overlapping on top of each other, you can simply select them and just reposition them either up or down. And we have one last label to do. And we have, again, another leader line appearing. And I don't want that line to appear, so I'll just select that line, select the option for Format Leader Lines, and just add a no line to it. Now that we have all our labels added in, we no longer need our legend. So we'll go ahead and get rid of our legend. We can also at this time get rid of our primary axis since we already had the data labels. So we already know what the values of each endpoint of the lines are. And the other thing I like to do is also to reposition our x-axis to the top of the chart. To do that, you simply select the axis, right-click on Format Axis, and then under Axis option, you'll scroll down till you see Labels. We'll just open the drop-down for the labels, scroll further down, and for label position, you'll just select the option for High. This will move the time points to the top of the chart. You can also make sure that the time points appear larger in font size by going to the Home tab and just increasing the size. So we'll just make this 14. I'll just drag this chart a little bit down. And the other thing I like to do is to also add additional lines on our data points so that it guides the reader to the time points that I'm denoting. You can do that by inserting shapes. So we'll go to the Insert tab. We'll click the drop down for the shapes and we'll just select a regular line shape. And we'll just add a line in here, like so. I'll go ahead and copy this line and just plot it on this side too. Now we just need to get rid of our grid lines. We can easily do that by simply selecting the grid lines and just hitting delete or backspace on your keyboard. If that doesn't work, you can also click the plus option and under grid lines, you will just uncheck the box for primary major horizontal grid lines. And that'll get rid of your grid lines too. And we'll see if our chart is almost free of any elements that could distract. You can see that we still have the x-axis line, so go ahead and get rid of that too. You simply select that line, which will make a box appear on your chart. Right click, and you'll click on Format Plot Area, and we'll just add a no line. We'll just select that no line option. So that didn't quite do it. All right, so we'll right click again, and now we have a Format Axis option. And then we'll go to the Pane Can, and under Line, we'll select No Line. And let's look at our chart there. Now the axis has disappeared. We'll go ahead, one more last step we have to do. We'll go ahead and add a descriptive title. Like so. And you can always just move your chart a little bit to the bottom so that the title is not in line with your time points. And if you would like to change the color of these lines, you can also click on this little paintbrush icon. And under color, let's do that again. You can select either a monochromatic gradient scale. I'm going to choose this, which goes from light to dark. And there we have it. Another option you can also consider doing is to also, if you want to emphasize one single data point, you can always just mute the colors of the other lines to a more of a gray tone shade. So I'll go ahead and show you how to do that. We'll just copy this chart again. We'll put it on the right side. And all you would do is you would select your data line that you want to mute, and you would just add a gray fill to it. We'll just pick the shade of gray and make sure you add the same gray fill to your outline too, like so. So we just kind of went ahead and did it for all the other lines, and we pre-made these charts. And you would have something that looks like so. And there we have it, a slope chart. You can see that the final chart of a slope chart is really simple and clean, and that the trends by type of contact methods between the two time points stand out very clearly. Remember, the goal of your chart is to effectively and quickly communicate your information in a visual format to your audience. So although you may spend more time initially trying to clean and simplify a chart, the outcome will be much better in the end. And not to mention, your readers will appreciate it too.
So now that we've created these visually clear and appealing charts, We can simply transpose them into our customized report and present it to our client, Joe Fake.
And here we have it, a custom report with all the charts. Coming back to our story, Joe then presented this awesome report to his board members, who were extremely pleased with the visual elements that help to convey the data and the information in a simple and clear format.
And alas, we have come to the end of our webinar, and we hope that our charts have sparked some creative ideas for you and have made you feel a little more confident about navigating the different elements in Excel. That being said, before we break for the afternoon, we would like to do another quick poll. So how confident do you feel about creating charts in Excel after this webinar? So very confident, I'm ready to go. Somewhat confident, I've got the basics down. A little confident, I will need to review this webinar again. Or not confident at all, I'm totally lost.
So it looks like based on your responses, looks like most of you feel either very confident that you're ready to go, and we're super happy about that, and the rest of you feel a little confident and that you may need to review this webinar again, which is not a problem too.
So lastly,
so we'll just go ahead and close that poll. And here's just a little additional resources.
yeah. So here are some of the resources that may be helpful in your chart creation. And then we also have our contact info. So feel free to reach out to us via phone or email. We love chatting about charts and all things data visualization. And if you'd like to be updated on similar workshops in the future, we recommend signing up for our monthly newsletter.
And at this time, we'll open up the floor for any questions you may have. I'm going to unmute you guys. And if you have any questions, you can also type it up in the questions pane that appears in your GoToWebinar section.
So working on getting you all muted now, and then we'll go with our question.
Oh. So all of you are unmuted now. And if you have any questions, just feel free to type it up in the questions pane too. So Jen Pritchard had a question about why we chose a certain font size and the left alignment. We just chose a font size that's a little bit easier for the reader to read. It's always best to pick a font size that's the same type as the report style that you have. And the left alignment it's just a standardization that we use in our reports. You can always center your title if you prefer. We just think that the left alignment just helps the reader easily read the title.
Looks like we had another question, Dana, about why you added 50 to do the broken scattered bar chart.
Right, so that was for the broken stack bar chart. The 50, we actually chose 50 was the maximum value in our data set, in our original data set. So we just picked that original 50 number, and then we just added 10. So that gave us the value of 60. So we're choosing the maximum value so that the spaces in between are enough so that the bars appear to be left aligned and not like the original stacked version that we showed you initially. Do you have any other questions? Again, if you can't quite speak, or if you're having issues with the audio, feel free to type your questions too.
Or if you guys come up with questions later, feel free to email us and reach out to us, and we'd be happy to answer them for you. So other than that, it looks like I don't think anybody else has any more questions. So I think we're gonna go ahead and end our webinar. We definitely thank you all for attending.
Yes.
And hope you have a great afternoon. So goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.